How's everyone today? Pretty good? It's a hot day, isn't it? Well, we've had many hot days. I read in Taipei yesterday it was over 49 degrees, so that's very hot. 39, sorry, 39, 49. Yeah. No, 49 would be a little crazy. Yeah, no, 39, yeah. But that 39 is still very hot, especially with Taiwan's humidity, right? You know what humidity is, right? Okay, yeah, so honestly, I've been many places around the world, and I still think Taiwan is one of the most humid places I've ever been. Sometimes I feel like it's even more humid than like if you go to Southeast Asia, Dongnanya. I feel like Taiwan is equally humid or even more humid than there. So, yeah, it's a very humid place. So, yeah, but I saw in Europe it was over 40 degrees, like 42, 43 in some places. But then I saw an article, it said in India, they call it the hottest place on earth, or one of the hottest places on earth. There's a place in India, maybe it's in the desert, but they said it gets over 50 degrees. So that's insane. I mean, I don't know how people live in that weather. Yeah. Okay, good. So as he noted here, I apologize. I thought I was going to be here on July 31st, but I'm not. I don't get back until August 8th. So our next, just a reminder that our next session will be early August, and then we'll have 3 sessions in August. So, yeah. Okay, good. Yes? You usually don't get back until August 8th? Sorry, August 1st. August 1st, sorry. I must have not slept long enough last night. Yeah. So, yeah, August 1st I get back. Yeah. Okay, so I thought I was laughing a little bit at this article yesterday. I was reading not this article, but a related article online, and there's some things I found kind of funny or amusing about this article. Of course, you know who the Dalai Lama is, right? Okay, I know he's been to Taiwan. I remember a long time ago when I was still a reporter, I remember he came to Taichung, actually, for a meeting or something, and I got to see him from very far away. So anyhow, why don't we say together, Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama. So it says here, Dalai Lama says he will be reincarnated. Okay, what does reincarnated mean? Yeah, so I know that some of you perhaps come from a Buddhist, Fojiao background, religious background, and so people in Buddhism often talk about reincarnation. So if it's a 名词, then it becomes a T-I-O-N, reincarnation. Okay, so why don't we first, let's say this word, reincarnated. Reincarnated. And then let's say it as a noun, reincarnation. Reincarnation. Yeah, so of course, with Buddhism, they talk about this a lot. So it says, he will be reincarnated. Okay, so that's, and I know that China is not happy about this. Let me just reduce. Yeah. I don't know. I think he's in his 90. I think he's 90 years old. Sorry, can we, the sizing of the, I noticed, okay. Okay. So anyhow, is that okay? Yeah. Okay, so let me read this. It says, the Dalai Lama yesterday assured his followers that upon his death, he would be reincarnated as the next spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, and spelled out a succession process that sets up a renewed clash with China. Okay, so when we say he assured his followers, when you assure somebody, what does that mean? Yeah, well, it's not exactly the same as promise, but it means to tell somebody that, hey, don't worry, I'm sure that this will happen, right? We know the word sure, S-U-R-E, right? So if you assure somebody, you make them confident, you give them assure. There's a word that's very similar to this. If someone's feeling very nervous or very worried about something, and then you we say we reassure them, right? So sometimes parents have to reassure their children that everything is okay or that they love them or things like that. So we say, I reassured him that it would be fine. Okay, so we talk about to assure or to reassure means to make people, to emphasize something is going to be okay. Okay, so why don't we say together, assured, assured, reassure, reassure. Okay, so he assured his followers, of course these are people who follow him, who believe in him, that upon his death, of course when we say upon your death, it means when you die. So this is a very common expression. We say upon his death. You could say, upon my arrival in Taipei, I went to get lunch. Okay, it means when I arrived in Taipei. So we often say upon your arrival, upon his death. It means when this happens. So upon his death, he would be reincarnated as the next spiritual leader. Okay, now of course he's not a political leader, not really. But he's a spiritual leader, so he leads their religion, of Tibetan Buddhism. Now, of course, you know where Tibet is, right? Where's Tibet? Xizang, yeah. So why don't we say together, Tibet. Tibet. Tibetan. Tibetan. And then, of course, Buddhism. Buddhism. Okay, so the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism. And he spelled out a succession process. Now, when you spell, of course we all learn spelling in school, but when you spell something out, what does that mean? Yeah, you specify. I think another word that it's kind of sounds similar, but we say to specify something, right? To be specific. So, the word specific. So sometimes we say to specify. I specified what I'm going to do in my project or my plan. It means I was very specific. So when you spell something out, it means that you tell people exactly what's going to happen. So he spelled out, or we could say he specified, a succession process. Now, succession means what? Yeah, so of course we think of the word success. That's a different word,成功, to be successful. But here, succession means who comes after you, usually if you're a leader or something like that. So, not every country, but most countries have a succession process for leaders, right? When one leader dies, maybe they're, in Taiwan, for example, if the leader passed away, I remember many years ago, Jiang Jingguo, when he passed away, part of the succession process was Li Denghui became president because he was vice president, right? So, with a company, for example, maybe a big corporation, sometimes when the leader steps down, the CEO or the chairman or president steps down, there's a succession process, like a way to come with a new leader. So why don't we say together, succession. Succession. Okay. Of course, the one I think of the most is England, right? When the queen, she passed away 2 or 3 years ago, and the succession process means that her son, Charles, became the new king. Okay. So there's a succession process. Okay, that sets up. Okay, sets up means to create. So sets up a renewed clash with China. Now, renewed, of course, it means, the word to renew means a new clash. Okay, what's a clash mean? Conflict, yeah. Conflict or confrontation. You can say, I clashed with him over his ideas. Okay, I had a conflict, a disagreement. Okay, why don't we say together, clash. Clash. Okay, we haven't said that word either. To specify. To specify. Right, which is the same as spelled out. Okay, so let's read this together. The Dalai Lama yesterday assured his followers that upon his death he would be reincarnated. Reincarnated as the next spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism. And spelled out a succession process. Succession process that sets up a renewed clash with China. Okay. Now, again, I hope you understand. Spiritual refers to what? Yeah, of course we have not everyone, but most people believe we have a spirit, right? So spiritual usually refers to our religious beliefs, okay? So we could say religious leader, right? You could say that too. But spiritual leader, I don't know, sounds a little bit better. Okay, so it says here, the eagerly awaited statement made days before the frail Nobel Peace Laureate turns 90, so there he is, he's almost 90, puts to rest speculation started by the Dalai Lama himself that he might be the last of Tibet's spiritual leaders, ending a line that stretches back centuries. Okay, so when we say the eagerly awaited, if something is eagerly awaited, what does that mean? Yeah, it's greatly anticipated. It's something that we really look forward to. So, often we say, I eagerly await something. We could say, I look forward to something, right? I could say, eagerly, we could say greatly anticipated, okay? Anticipate, is to look forward to, okay? So these are all words. I look forward to something. I really anticipate or greatly anticipate. Or we could say eagerly anticipate. Eagerly awaited. It means you're looking forward to something. You're waiting for something. It's going to happen. Sometimes we greatly, when we're children, of course, we eagerly await our birthdays, right? Because we know we're probably going to get some gifts from our friends or family. Okay, so why don't we say together, eagerly awaited. Eagerly awaited. Okay, so people were waiting for him to say something. Okay, and the statement was made days before the frail Nobel Peace Laureate. Now, there's a Nobel Peace Prize, right? And so when you win the Peace Prize, you become a Nobel Peace, or any prize, whatever the prize. It's not always a peace prize, but you could say a laureate. Laureate means you win something. So you just made a motion. So this word comes from the word laurel, okay? Does everybody know what a laurel is? Okay. It goes back to where? When did it start? Yeah, people would wear this thing with these leaves on it on their heads, right? And yeah. And so when you won, Olympic Games, like if you were the winner, they would give you this laurel, okay? So it means like you're a winner, right? So from that word laurel, we have the word laureate, okay? So why don't we say that word first? Laurel. Laurel. Laureate. Laureate. Yeah, we don't really talk about laurels much anymore. I mean, I don't know anybody who actually gives out a real laurel, but anyhow, we still say laureate. So he is the Nobel Peace Laureate. Now, it says here that he is frail. What does frail mean? Yeah, weak, not strong. Yeah, usually people are frail as they become more frail when they get older, right? Or if they're sick, you become frail. Okay, so why don't we say together, frail. Frail. Okay, so just before he turns 90, and his statement, okay, what he said, puts to rest speculation. Now, first of all, we've talked about this before, but what does to speculate mean? To guess, right? If you say, well, I speculate that he is going to leave his job soon, it means I'm guessing that he might leave his job soon. To speculate, it's like speculation, when we talk about things that might happen, but we're not sure. So it puts to rest speculation. So when we say it puts that speculation to rest, what does that mean? It stops it, right? So I'll tell you this word, to put to rest. Sometimes we often use this also not with speculation, but we use it with the word rumors. Okay? You know what a rumor is, right? Rumor is like, what is it, 传说 or something like that. Yeah. So, often there's rumors going around. People are like, oh, did you hear that he's doing this? Or did you hear she might be doing that? And to put to rest rumors or to put to rest speculation means we end it, we stop it. Usually by telling the truth, right? By saying what's really happening. Okay, so it says here, puts to rest speculation this speculation was started by the Dalai Lama himself. He said it, that he might be the last of Tibet's spiritual leaders, ending a line that stretches back centuries. Okay, centuries is hundreds of years, right? So when we say a line, right, we're talking about a line, we say a line of succession, right? Remember we just used the word succession, right? Or we can say a succession line. For example, we talk about the Queen and the King of England, right? There is a line that goes back for centuries, right? There's many different kings and queens that go back for a very, very long time. So that's a line. It's like we could say we have a family line, right? Like all of you have a family line. If you look back, who's your father and mother, and then your grandparents, and then it just keeps going. That's a line, right? Yeah, family tree, yes. Lineage, yeah, okay, lineage, that's a good word, yeah. So he just gave a word. You can say, what's your lineage? And you can see here, when we say lineage, it has the word line, right? Lineage is your background, your ancestors, your family tree. It's who went before you, where'd your family come from? Okay, many people have very interesting lineages, especially if you look in the United States. Often you ask people what their lineage is. It's a really unusual lineage. I mean, they come from all over the place. Their parents. You said. Yeah. I usually say genealogy. Yeah, genealogy. So why don't we say the word lineage? Lineage. Right. So someone might say, what's your lineage? Okay. And then this other word, rumors. Rumors. Okay. So yeah, lineage. I think I have a pretty interesting lineage. I mean, if you look at my mother's side, they're all, going back 3 generations or so, they're all from, Guangzhou, And then on my father's side, if you go back many generations, it's Germany and Switzerland, right? So it's a very unusual, mixed up lineage, but yeah. Yeah. Okay, so anyhow, let's read this together. The eagerly awaited statement. Made days before the frail Nobel Peace Laureate turns 90, puts to rest speculation. Started by the Dalai Lama himself. That he might be the last of Tibet's spiritual leaders, ending a line that stretches back centuries. Let's say it again, that stretches back centuries. Yeah, centuries. Okay. So, yeah, century, 1 century is 100 years, right? So, whenever I'm trying to explain 皮蛋 to my foreign friends, like we usually just say a century-old egg, right? Century egg, right? I used to say 1,000-year-old eggs, but that seems like too long, right? So I just say century egg or century-old egg, yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's go on. It says, speaking during a week of celebrations in the northern Indian hill town of Dharamshala to mark his birthday, the Dalai Lama said a non-profit institution he has set up would have the sole authority to identify his reincarnation, countering China's insistence that it would choose his successor. Okay, so I think you know what the disagreement or dispute is that the Dalai Lama says, well, we have someone who's going to tell you who my reincarnation is, right? But the Gongchangdang says, no, we will decide who his reincarnation is. It's very funny. The reason I was laughing yesterday, and many people were laughing, I was reading the comments, was the CCP, the Gongchangdang, was saying, they said, only we have the right to decide who is going to be reincarnated, or how are you going to be reincarnated. And people were like, how can the Gongchangdang decide who is the reincarnation, right? It's not their authority, right? It's like saying, it's like they're God, right? We will decide, right? So anyhow, of course, they think they're God. So anyhow, it says, speaking during a week of celebrations. Okay, this is for his birthday celebrations. It says here, to mark his birthday. When we celebrate something, we say to mark it, right? For example, this week, what's today? Tomorrow we will mark America's Independence Day, right? So July 4th is American Independence Day. So we say to mark it means to celebrate it. Okay, to mark his birthday, the Dalai Lama said a non-profit institution. Now, of course, when we say non-profit institution, what does that mean? Yeah, non-profit means, yeah. Sometimes we say, well, some people say NGO, but NGO actually means non-government organization, right? But many non-profit institutions are NGOs. They're non-government organizations. But yeah, there's many non-profit institutions, or we could say non-profit organization. Either way is fine, okay? Yeah, but you have to, I'm involved, I'm on the board, I'm a 理事 of the台中美国商会. We are a non-profit institution. So every year, of course, we have to look at the money that comes in, and we have to be very careful. We can't keep too much money, right? We have to give it away or do something with it, right? So why don't we say together, non-profit institution. Non-profit institution. Okay, and let's say it the other way, non-profit organization. Okay. Sometimes, sometimes when we're talking about this, they shorten that and they just say, I work for a nonprofit. So sometimes people they won't say this, they'll just take that out, and they'll just turn nonprofit into a 名词. So if you hear someone say, oh, he works at a nonprofit, it means he works for a nonprofit organization. That's what it means. Okay. So it says a nonprofit institution he has set up, he created it, would have the sole authority. So when we say sole, what does that mean? Only. Okay, means that only that group has the authority. Nobody else, not the Gongchangdang or anybody else. They have the sole authority. Okay, sometimes we say the sole right, 权利, right? So sole authority. Why don't we say together, sole authority? Sole authority. Sole authority. Okay, to identify, okay, means to identify his reincarnation. So they're going to decide which person is his reincarnation. Who is that? Okay, countering China's insistence. Okay, countering China's insistence. Of course, if you insist on something, it becomes a 名词, insistence. Okay, so of course you can make this into a 形容词too. It could be insistent with a T. Insistent. You could say he is a very insistent person. Okay, so China's insistence that it would choose his successor. Now successor, remember we talked about succession. Successor is a person, right? You can say, who is your successor? Who was Queen Elizabeth's successor? Her son, Prince Charles, right, was Queen Elizabeth's successor. Okay? So why don't we say together, successor. Successor. Now here it says countering China's insistence or claim. What does to counter mean? Yeah, to go against, right? If you counter somebody's argument, right? Let's say you're having this argument and that person says something and then you counter it. It means I say something that goes against their argument or their whatever they're saying. Okay, so we say to counter. Okay, so let's read this. Speaking during a week of celebrations in the northern Indian hill town of Dharamshala to mark his birthday, the Dalai Lama said a non-profit institution, he has set up would have the sole authority to identify his reincarnation. Reincarnation. Countering China's insistence that it would choose his successor. Successor. Okay. Okay, so that's a photo. Let's go on. It says, Beijing yesterday reiterated that it had to improve the reincarnation. This is what I was laughing at. Okay? And that it had to be done in China through a centuries-old ritual. Okay? Reiterated means to say, what does that mean? To say again. Yeah. You know, I guess you can reiterate more than once. You can reiterate many times, right? Say it over and over and over again. So why don't we say together, to reiterate. To reiterate. Okay, so they reiterated that that China had to approve the reincarnation. It had to be done in China through a centuries old, it's very old, a ritual. What is a ritual? Yeah, it's like a ceremony. It's often, when we say rituals, they're often associated, they're also often connected to religion. Yeah, there's many different religious ceremonies. I mean, in Taiwan, every day almost you see some sort of ritual, right? There's a little temple right in front of my house, and they always, sometimes when they have big rituals, it's very noisy. Yeah, so anyhow, this word here, ritual, it has more of a CH sound, okay? So why don't we say it together, ritual. Ritual. Right, there's many rituals. Now, we can use this word in other ways, right? We could say, what is your morning ritual, okay? And people say, I get up, I wash my face, I drink coffee, I have breakfast, I read the newspaper, and so when we use ritual in that way, we're actually referring to a similar word, and that is routine. Okay? What is a routine? Yeah, it's like something you do every day or something that you do regularly, right? So you can say, what is your morning ritual or what is your morning routine? Okay? Now, routine can become a 形容词, right? You can say, this job is become very routine. So if you say my job is very routine, what does that mean? Yeah, it's kind of usually means like I do the same thing every single day, and it means it's boring. It's not interesting. It's just like over and over and over again. Okay. Yes.
What is iterate as opposed to reiterate?
Well.
I heard a British person talk about this idea yesterday, like iteration.
I know iteration is like a version of something. Yeah. So, yeah. But we don't use the word iterate as much. It's not as common a word. But reiterate is very common. So, yeah. Okay, so why don't we read this together? Beijing yesterday reiterated that it had to approve the reincarnation. And that it had to be done in China through a centuries-old ritual. Ritual. Right. Okay. Okay, so it says here, Beijing views the Dalai Lama, who fled to India from Tibet in 1959 after a failed uprising against Chinese rule, as a separatist. Okay, so this whole phrase here describes the Dalai Lama. But it says here, Beijing views the Dalai Lama as a separatist. What is a separatist? Right. Yeah. So, I know Beijing also accuses many Taiwanese as being separatists, right? They say, oh, you want to leave, you don't want to be a part of China. So, yeah, separate, of course, means to 分开, right? So a separatist is somebody who is promoting leaving or not being a part of the country. So, of course, Tibet has a problem with China because many Tibetans think that Tibet is, should be an independent country and that China took over Tibet unfairly or unjustly. Okay, so why don't we say together, separatist. Separatist. Okay, so, and then it describes the Dalai Lama. It says, who fled. Okay, fled comes from the word to flee, F-L-E-E. And flee means what? Run away, 逃跑, right? It means to take off, okay. I'll never forget, maybe I told you this a long time ago. I'll never forget, this is a very long time ago, one of my first visit to Chongqing in China. And I was by myself, I was, 背包客, so I was just traveling around. And I remember I met these three 国中老师, these junior high school teachers, Chinese teachers. They were very friendly. And I think they were very excited to meet a 美国人. So they were talking to me and they were showing me around and they were, very excited. And I remember we went to the, the river, the Changjiang River there, and right in the middle of Chongqing. And there's a little island in the middle of the river, a tiny island. But at that time, and this was a long time ago, there wasn't anything on the island except you could see it looked like a strip, almost looked like a road on the island, and then there was a little building there, but there was nobody there. And I remember these teachers saying, they said, you know what that island is? They said, that is where Jiang Jieshi 逃跑 from. It used to be a runway, a 跑道, a runway for the airport in the middle of the river. And so they're like, that's where Jiang Jieshi fled from, right? That's where he ran away from China. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Because I told them that I lived in Taiwan, right? So that's why they told me. But yeah, so it was an interesting history lesson. But anyhow, we say flee, to flee, or fled, so yeah. So he fled from India, fled to India, right? He fled from China, or from Tibet, actually. I shouldn't say China. He fled from Tibet to India in 1959 after a failed uprising. What is an uprising? Yeah, rebellion, I think, is a better word, okay? So uprising is simply another word for rebellion. Okay, rebellion is to, am I spelling that right? Is that a O? I think that's right, O. Yeah. So rebel, or to rebel. So remember, I think you all know this, but rebel or rebel, right? Rebel is the person, right? He is a rebel, right? But as a 动词, we pronounce it differently. We say to rebel. Okay, so the accent is different. So first of all, the person, let's say a rebel. A rebel. Right, we can say he is a rebel. And then the 动词, to rebel. To rebel. Right, and then this word, rebellion. Rebellion. And then this word, uprising. Uprising. Right, you can understand that because a rebellion is to rise up, right, against the authorities or the power of the government. Okay, so it was a failed uprising against Chinese rule. Okay, so let's read this. Beijing views the Dalai Lama, who fled to India from Tibet in 1959. 1959, after a failed uprising against Chinese rule, as a separatist. Separatist. Okay, so it says here, the Dalai Lama has said his successor would be born outside China, and urged his followers to reject anyone chosen by Beijing In previous years, he had also said it was possible there might be no successor at all. Okay, so now he says his successor would be born outside China. So he's not somebody who's in or is born there. It's someone outside. Okay, and he urged his followers to reject, okay, to not allow or not accept anyone chosen by Beijing. Okay, so let's read this. The Dalai Lama has said his successor would be born outside China, and urged his followers to reject anyone chosen by Beijing. In previous years, he had also said it was possible that there might be no successor at all. Right. So yeah, before he said maybe there's nobody. Okay. Okay, so here he says, I am affirming that the institution of the Dalai Lama will continue, the Dalai Lama said in a video message, setting off cheers and applause from more than 100 monks in maroon robes who had gathered in a library in Dharamshala. Okay, so he says, I am affirming. What is to affirm? What does that mean again? To confirm, right? Remember, we know the word confirm, right? I confirm something, 确定, right? So to affirm also is similar to that word. Although sometimes affirm has a very, it has more of a positive sound to it, right? Like if you affirm somebody, it means sometimes to praise them, 赞美他们. If you say, I affirm that they're a good person or they're a good student or that, to give them assurance, right? To assure them, right? So to affirm is very similar to the word to assure, right? So to assure, to affirm. Okay? So why don't we say together, affirm, affirm, assure. We talked about the assure, okay? So he says, I'm affirming that the institution of the Dalai Lama will continue, okay? So it will go on. I mean, it's interesting because the Dalai Lama is a title, right? But it's also, we say an institution. It's like, when we say an institution, it means something, we can mean an organization, but it can also mean like a, something that is there long term and it does not change, right? Okay? For example, the Taichung Jieshu Yingyue Jie, the jazz festival. Often I say that is a Taichung institution. Now, of course, the jazz festival is not an organization. It's an event, right? But if something's been around for a very long time and it doesn't change, we can also say it is an institution. It means it's something that everyone knows and it's here and it doesn't change and we expect it. So it could be an event like the jazz festival because it goes every year, every year, every year. Okay, so it says here the institution of the Dalai Lama will continue. Okay, now he's giving a video message. And this message set off means it triggered, it created cheers and applause. What's applause mean? Clapping, right? Okay. Why don't we say together, applause. Applause. Okay, for more than 100 monks. You know what a monk is, right? Okay. Yeah. What is the female version of a monk? Nun. Okay. So we have a monk and we also have a nun. Okay. Okay, so why don't we say together, monk, monk, nun, nun. Okay, so I know in Buddhism, in Tianzhujiao, Catholic Church, in other, mostly those two, maybe a few others. Okay, monks in maroon. Okay, this is interesting. What color is maroon? Okay, I don't know if anyone here is wearing maroon today. It's like dark red. Yeah, dark red. Okay. Maybe your T-shirt comes close to the maroon color. It's kind of like that. Yeah, it's kind of a dark red color. Okay. I like maroon. I think it's a nice color. So why don't we say together maroon? Maroon. Maroon. Okay, so they're wearing maroon robes. You know how monks wear robes, right? This robe. Now, of course, there's many different kinds of. How do you say robe in Chinese? Yeah, it's like a long outfit. You know, sometimes some robes are very casual. Like some people have a bathroom robe, right? You know, if you go to a hotel or even at your home, sometimes after people take a shower, they have a robe and they wear that. It's comfortable, you know, and yeah. So there's different kinds of robes. Okay, a king or a queen often has a special robe. Okay, so yeah, why don't we say together robe? No. Robe. No. Okay, so these more than 100 monks in maroon robes who had gathered in a library in Dharamshala. Okay. Okay, so let's read this together. I am affirming that the institution of the Dalai Lama will continue. The Dalai Lama said in a video message, setting off cheers and applause from more than 100 monks in maroon robes who had gathered in a library in Dharamshala. Okay. Okay. It's interesting, this city or town of Dharamshala, it's known as the Tibetan capital. Let me see. Government. We could say Tibetan government in exile. Okay. What does exile mean? Yeah. So if you're kicked out, right? If your government has to leave or your leader has to flee, then you are in exile. Okay. I'm trying to think. What leaders are living in exile today? Are there any leaders that are in exile? Oh, well, the guy that fled Iran is dead. The Shah, you mean? But it was his son. The son is, I guess you could say the son is in exile. So, you know, sometimes you have a leader and there's like a geming, right? And they have to leave. They have to taopao. They have to flee. And then we say they are living in exile, right? So the Tibetan government in exile is in that town of Dharamshala. It's in India, and that's where they have their government in exile. It's not, of course, they can't stay in Tibet, but they fled to India, and that's where they are now. So why don't we say together, exile? Exile. Exile. So we can say the word exile can be a 动词. We can say he was exiled to whatever country, right? He was exiled to France or wherever. Okay. Yes.
Is the word only used for politicians? Also refers to like criminals fleeing the country?
I think it's usually for politicians and leaders, not criminals. We wouldn't say that. Yeah. Yeah. So anyhow, it says here the event was also attended by journalists from around the world and longtime supporters, including Hollywood star Richard Gere. I know that Richard Gere is a really big supporter of the Dalai Lama. Although Richard Gere doesn't really make movies anymore, does he? I haven't seen a movie by him in a very long time. The movie I associate with Richard Gere is that old movie Pretty Woman, right? Remember that movie? Yeah. So anyhow. Oh, he didn't like it. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe because now he's Buddhist or something. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this. The event was also attended by journalists from around the world and longtime supporters including Hollywood star Richard Gere. Okay. Okay, it says here, he added, this is the Dalai Lama, added that the Gaden Phodrang Trust, the nonprofit organization that he set up to maintain and support the tradition and institution of the Dalai Lama, has the sole authority to recognize his reincarnation in consultation with the heads of Tibetan Buddhist traditions. So if you say in consultation with, it means what? To consult with, right? To ask someone, right? So sometimes when we have to make a decision, we may consult with other people, right? You might consult with your friends, right? You might consult with your parents or your family members. You might say, what do you think? What do you think I should do? Do you have any opinion? So we say, I'm consulting with them. Now, of course, consultant can be very official, like a 顾问, right? But it can be very casual, too, like talking to your friends or your family, okay? So it says here, in consultation. It comes from the word consult. In consultation with the heads, the leaders of Tibetan Buddhist traditions. Okay. So this is how he wants it to work, okay? So let's read this. He added that the Gaden Phodrang Trust, the nonprofit organization that he set up to maintain and support the tradition and institution of the Dalai Lama has the sole authority to recognize his reincarnation. Okay, so again, reincarnation. In consultation with the heads of Tibetan Buddhist traditions. Okay, yeah. So, what was I going to say here? Oh, this word trust, okay? It's a, how do you say it in Chinese? It's an organization. It's like a, it doesn't mean like I trust you, right? It's different. It's like it's a specific legal name. Okay, you know, like I don't know about Taiwan, but sometimes if in America, if people have lots of money, and they want to give the money to their children, they will create a trust. It's like they will put the money in that, and the trust usually has conditions, right? Like, okay, if you want this money, this is what you have to do, or this money is released to you when you reach this age, right? Or somebody will oversee that trust. They will supervise it, and then they will determine how that money is given out. Yeah. So we call that a trust. Okay. Okay. That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, you would think so, right? But yeah, so it might be somebody who's born like in Dharamshala, right? You know, there's many Tibetans living there, so yeah, but I mean, I feel like it should be Tibetan, right? I mean, but I'm not the Dalai Lama, so I can't decide. You know, maybe you know, just 2 months ago or 3 months ago, the new Pope of the Catholic Church is American, right? So maybe it could be American, right? No, I'm joking, but yeah. Yeah.
Have they been reincarnations being Tibetan all along?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. It would be funny though if it was an American, right? Yeah. Now that I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. Okay. So here it says they should accordingly carry out the procedures of search and recognition in accordance with past tradition. No one else has any such authority to interfere in this matter the Dalai Lama said. Now it's funny, he uses the word authority several times here, right? So first of all, it says they should accordingly. It means according to, right? If you do something accordingly, it means I follow something. Maybe it's the law or the process or the procedure, okay? So they, sometimes we say he should act accordingly. It means he should behave according to whatever, okay? So why don't we say it together? Accordingly. Accordingly. Of course, it's a 副词, it's an adverb, okay? So they should accordingly carry out, means to implement the procedure, okay? The process of search and recognition. So, of course, you're looking, right? You're searching, and then you recognize, right? You say, oh, that's him, right? That's the Dalai Lama. That's the new Dalai. So you recognize, okay? Search and recognition in accordance. So here's that word. We say accordingly, and then we say in accordance with, right? So often we say in accordance with the law. In accordance with this, it means to follow something, right? But often we say in accordance with the law, with the 法律, right? I will follow the law, okay, according to the law. So it says in accordance with what? Past tradition, okay? So of course, this is a religion, right? So they don't have, I don't think they have laws, but they have a tradition, right? According to my tradition, what should I do? If something, now tradition, we say traditional is 传统, right? But tradition also can mean like, what are your traditions? What do you do? Taiwan has many traditions, right? They have religious traditions, they have cultural traditions. There's many things that that you do normally, regularly, according to your tradition. So it says here, in accordance with past tradition, no one else has any such authority. There's the word again. Accordingly, accordance with, authority, okay, to interfere with this in this matter. We could say interfere in this matter or interfere with this matter. And what does interfere mean? Get involved, right? If I get involved and try to change something, I might be saying I interfere with something, okay? So this is what he's being very specific, okay. So let's read this. They should accordingly carry out the procedures of search and recognition in accordance with past tradition. No one else has any such authority to interfere in this matter. The Dalai Lama said. Right. Okay. So the word procedure, of course, is this word up here is often we could also say process, right? What is the process for doing something? What is the procedure for doing something? Okay. We have processes for many things. Okay. So it says here, meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has lifted aid cuts for Tibetans in exile. Okay, well, that's good. And would provide $7 million in financing for projects such as those supporting health and education, Central Tibetan Administration leader Penpa Tsering said. Their Tibetan names are very interesting. Whenever I see a Tibetan name, I know it's a Tibetan name because there's no other language. It has a very specific sound to it. Okay, so Donald Trump, his government cut many aid programs around the world. But here it says Donald Trump's administration has lifted aid cuts. When you lift an aid cut, it means you cancel it. I mean, it doesn't mean he canceled the aid. It means he lifted or canceled the cut, right? Which means that now they're giving aid again. They stopped it, but now they're giving aid again. So when you lift a cut, it means you end the cut, which means you continue the aid, right? Okay. So it says he lifted aid cuts for Tibetans in exile. So here's that word, exile. Remember we talked about that? So Tibetans in exile. and would provide $7 million in financing. It means, money, assistance for projects supporting health and education. Okay, so let's read this. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has lifted aid cuts for Tibetans in exile. And would provide $7 million in financing for projects such as those supporting health and education. Central Tibetan Administration Leader Penpa Tsering said. Okay, yeah. I've noticed this name here is very common in Tibetan names. And I'm not sure what this means, but I see this a lot, Tsering. I see it so much. It seems for male, men, yeah. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else here that's kind of interesting. Okay. I don't think there's anything too interesting here, but any questions before we go to a different story? Any questions about anything? Okay. Yeah. We could say certain traditions have become institutions, or they're institutions that they're related, but they're not the exact same word. Yeah. Institution? What would be another institution? Something that, okay, every year in Daja we have that Matsu pilgrimage, right? That's an institution, right? It happens every year, right? It's a big deal. Many people go there. Everybody knows about it. It happens every single year. So we say that is a religious institution of Taiwan. Now again, we're not talking about a building or an organization. We're talking about an event that has become a tradition, a very important tradition, or practice. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so let's go on to a different article. But yeah, I thought it was just kind of funny that the Beijing says, no, we decide who's going to reincarnate. So, yeah, it's kind of amusing. Let's see here. I saw another article today. Okay. Okay, this one. I've been hearing about this a lot. And people have been saying, somebody was talking to me about this yesterday, and I was like, I don't know. Okay. So I've been hearing a lot about people saying that there is a rumor or prediction that there's going to be a megaquake in Japan on Saturday, right? Did you hear this? Okay. So we say that, I already said the word rumor, right? But we could say there's a prediction, or we could say there is a prophecy. We could say somebody, not prophesy, there's another word. They foresee or foretell. Yeah. Forecast sounds more like a official, like weather report. Okay. So prediction, to predict means what? To say what's going to happen, right? We may predict the weather, right? We might say, well, I think today it's going to rain this afternoon. But then prophecy is more like religious, okay? Like if you read many religions, they have prophecies about the future. A prophecy is to say what's going to happen in the future, right? So do you remember many people were concerned about 2012, right? Because they said, oh, there was some 南美洲, some Inca Indian prophecy that said the world was going to end in 2012, right? So it was a prophecy. It was like a prediction, but usually we say more like a religious prediction that something is going to happen. And then we can say as a 动词, sometimes people say, well, I foresee. For F-O-R-E means what? Before, right? So if you foresee something, it means you see something before it happens. Now, foresee does not have to be a prophecy. For example, you can say, I foresee him quitting his job this year. It means I think this is going to happen. I predict this is going to happen. I foresee rain this afternoon, right? It means I think that's going to happen. Or foretell means to say, talk about something before it happens, okay? So these are all words that are kind of similar, but prophecy is usually very specific, like this is going to happen at this time, right? So anyhow, there have been these predictions, and I heard it was made by a woman who is famous because she predicted, what did she predict? She predicted did she predict like a 大地震 somewhere else, or I forget, I don't know what's going on. Anyhow, people are talking about this mega quake. Yeah. So what is a mega means what? Huge, right? We have super, we have hyper, we have mega. Mega means super big, right? Okay. So it says Japan updates preparedness plan. What is a preparedness plan? Yeah, it means, readiness. So that would be a good word. Readiness means to be ready, right? Okay. So readiness, preparedness, it means to get ready for something or to prepare for something. So a readiness or preparedness plan is a plan that prepares for something, right? I was just reading an article last week about, people were talking about, I don't know if you've heard this term. It's kind of a funny term. People say you should always, at your home, you should keep a go bag. Okay? It's called a go bag, okay? I think maybe you know what I'm talking about. A go bag is a bag that you keep at home. If there's an emergency, you can get the bag and you can run. Yeah. So, I keep a go bag. I'll tell you, after 9/21, I was like, okay, I'm keeping a go bag, right? Because I always think if there's a fire or if there's an earthquake and I have to go really quickly, I can grab this bag and I can go. We call that a go bag, okay. I have flashlight, I have batteries, I have some food, I have water. I have chocolate, yeah. But I'm afraid, my problem is it's been sitting there so long, I think I have to replace the food. The food's been there too long. But the one thing I want to buy for my go bag is a small radio. They say it's always good to have a small battery radio, because sometimes you can listen to the radio. So that's on my list. I need to buy a radio, so yeah. But anyhow, yeah, I think a go bag's a good idea, I remember in my building about 2 years ago, there was a fire. It wasn't a serious fire, but the fire alarm went off, right? And everybody had to leave. And of course I thought, okay, I'm grabbing my go bag, because I wasn't sure where the fire was and how serious it was. And of course, I keep my passport and my some money and some things in my go bag. So yeah, hopefully I'm not telling you any secrets here. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So why don't we say together, mega quake. Mega quake. Now, sometimes people say super quake, right? But I've heard mega quake too. Okay. Oops. Okay, so let's read this. I'll read this. It says, much more needs to be done to prepare for a possible mega quake to reduce the feared death toll of up to 300,000 people, the Japanese government said. Okay? So this would be a crazy big earthquake. Like, like 8 or 9, on the scale. Right now, Taiwan, we've had a 7, 0.1 or 7.3. But I think when we say megaquake, we're talking about a huge earthquake. Okay, so it says much more needs to be done to prepare. So we talk about preparedness, to prepare for a possible, to reduce the death toll. Now, we've talked about the word before. Toll means what? Something that you pay, right? Like, when you drive on the 高速公路, you have to pay a toll. Yeah, there used to be a toll station. Now it uses the ETC, right? It's automatic. But you still have to pay a toll to use the 高速公路. But when we say a death toll, it means when you have a disaster, how many lives does it claim or take, right? Okay. So what? Fatalities, yeah. Okay. So let's read this. Much more needs to be done to prepare for a possible megaquake. Megaquake. To reduce the feared death toll. Death toll of up to 300,000 people. The Japanese government said. Okay. And let me read this. It says, earthquakes are extremely hard to predict, but in January, a government panel marginally increased the probability of a major jolt in the Nankai Trough off Japan in the next 30 years to 75 to 82%. Okay, so earthquakes are very hard to predict, right? Did you feel that earthquake about a week ago? There was an earthquake. Was that 10 days ago? There was a pretty big earthquake. And it was interesting because my phone, the warning went off, and instantly, there was no time, right? It wasn't like I had 5 seconds or 10 seconds. It was like the warning, and then boom, the earthquake hit. So there wasn't really much of a warning. But anyhow, so it's extremely hard to predict. But in January, this is a Japanese government panel. Panel means a group of people. Marginally increased, okay? So when you raise something marginally, what does that mean? By a small percent. If you say something is marginal or you do something marginally, it means you do something by a little bit more, okay? Just a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, okay? So if you say, let me give you an example. Let's say you like this product, but then your friend tells you to buy this product, and they say it's better. It's much, and you say, well, which one do you like? And you say, well, this product is marginally better than that product. It means that it's a little bit better, but not much, just by a little bit. Because you know what a margin is, right? When we have, like on a piece of paper, the border, the space around the words is called a margin, right? It's not very big. It's just a small space around the words on the edge of the paper. So if you have a book or a newspaper, there's always a margin around the sides. So when we say margin, it means a space, okay? Okay, so sometimes, let me give you one more example of this word, how we use it. Sometimes we say a margin, for error. So you can say, you know what does error mean? Mistake, right? So you can say, what is your margin for error? It means how much room do you have to make mistakes? Okay? And if you can say there's a very large margin for error, it means that there's a lot of possibility, 可能性, right, for errors. But if you say there's a very small margin for error, it means there's not much possibility that there's going to be a mistake or a problem. Okay? So margin's a good word. And so here they say marginally, just by a small point, increase the probability. Okay, so what is probability? What would be another word for probability? Okay, the word I was thinking about was But you just said
likelihood.
likelihood. Okay. It means what's the chance that something's going to happen? So we can say the probability of something happening, the possibility of something, the likelihood that something's going to happen means, yeah, what are the chances that this is going to happen? Okay, these words are all very similar. Okay, so why don't we say together, probability. Probability. You know, it looks like the word probable, right? Or probably, right? But probability, okay? This word, possibility. Possibility. Again, it looks like the word possible, right? Okay? Likelihood. Likelihood. You know, which looks like the word likely, right? If you say, sorry, that's a K. How likely is it that it is going to rain today, right? And you can say the probability of rain, or the possibility of rain, or the likelihood of rain this afternoon, okay? So these words are all very similar, okay? So here it says they marginally, a little bit, increased the probability of a major jolt. Now, what is the word jolt? Yeah, but jolt is just a motion, right? A jolt is a sudden, strong motion, okay? Tremor is another word we use for earthquakes. But let me give you an example. Let's say you're sleeping, and suddenly there's a very loud sound outside. You can say, I'll give you an example on Sunday. Was it Sunday? Yeah, Sunday afternoon. I was sitting in my apartment, and the windows were open. You know, it was a nice sunny day, and suddenly there was thunder. You know, very sudden, big thunder. And I was jolted by that thunder. It means I was kind of woken up, you know. Suddenly I woke up like I was surprised, okay? So if something moves very quickly, like let's say you're riding in a bus and the bus suddenly stops or suddenly goes forward and everyone is jolted. They move, there's a sudden motion. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So you can be jolted awake if you're sleeping. It suddenly happens and you're jolted awake. Or you can say the bus suddenly jolted and he fell over. Okay, he fell. Okay, because of the bus. So that's what it means here. Now, so this word jolt is, to be honest, we don't use this word a lot for earthquakes. We do. He just said a word. Sometimes we say tremor. Tremor means shaking, right? Now, of course, a tremor doesn't have to be an earthquake. You could say there's a tremor in my hand. If your hand is shaking, you could say I have tremors in my hands, okay? So the tremor can be used for an earthquake. Jolt, yeah, I mean, it's okay, but we don't use it a whole lot. Okay, so why don't we say this word together? Marginally. Marginally. Okay, jolt. Jolt. And then that word at the top, tremor. Tremor. Okay, so it marginally increased the probability, the chance. We could also say the chance. Actually, we could simply say chance, right? Of a major jolt in the Nankai Trough. Now, there's a funny word. What is a trough? Does anybody know? Yeah, it's like a ditch. Okay, so D-I-T-C-H. Okay. Now, if you drive around, especially out in the more xiangxia areas, you'll see some ditches or troughs in the middle of the nongtian, right, in the farm fields. It's like a long, how do you say in Chinese? A ditch? Go, yeah, like a shui go, right? Yeah, so a ditch or trough. So, of course, this is not a small trough. This is a very deep trough. I think it's probably underwater, right? It's in the ocean. And there's probably a fault line that creates earthquakes, okay? So why don't we say together, trough. Trough. And then that word, ditch. Ditch. Yes. Yeah, that's another word, trench. Actually, that's another word we use. T-R-E-N-C-H. A trench is also like a long ditch. But so there is one of the deepest part of the ocean in the world is called the Mariana Trench. It's like a long, deep line, basically. But you can dig a trench, right? Like in the war, during wartime, soldiers will dig a trench, right, to get underground. But I just want to say something else about a trowel. If you go to a farm, there's also what we call a feeding trowel. It's a long, maybe it's made out of wood or metal, and it's like a long thing, and the cows or the animals will eat out of it. They put the food in there, and then the animals stick their nose in there and they eat out of the trowel. So we call that a feeding trowel, F-E-E-D-I-N-G, feeding trowel. It's like this special place that we put the food for animals, usually for cows or sheep, or I don't know about sheep, maybe not sheep. Chickens, horses, yeah, they have a feeding trowel, okay? Okay, so one more time, let's say it together, trowel. Trowel. Okay, so let's read this. Earthquakes are extremely hard to predict. Predict. But in January, a government panel marginally increased. One more time, marginally increased. The probability of a major jolt in the Nankai Trough off Japan in the next 30 years to 75 to 80%. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, it was 82%, not 80%. Okay, so yeah, so I guess before it was 75%, and they've increased it marginally by 7% to 82%, which is kind of high, right? I mean, 82% is a pretty strong chance that there's going to be a major earthquake in the next 30 years. Okay, I mean, I guess 30 years is a long time, right? But I know. I was reading that there's a big earthquake, a mega earthquake that's overdue near Seattle, Washington. Washington State, Oregon, and we say the North Pacific Northwest. I hear that they're overdue by. There's like a 100-year or 200-year earthquake that they're overdue for right there near Seattle. So, yeah, I hear that's supposed to be a big one, like a 8 or a 9, a big earthquake. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully not. I hope not. Okay. So it says here the government released a new estimate in March saying that such a megaquake and subsequent, okay, here's that word, subsequent tsunami could cause as many as 298,000 deaths and damage of up to $2 trillion. Okay. Does everybody know what a trillion is? Trillion is what? 1兆, right? Okay, so yeah, up to $2 trillion. Okay. Yeah, what is an estimate? An estimate is what? Yeah, it's like a guess, but usually an estimate can be, well, not always, but sometimes it's more of like a scientific guess, like it's a real, okay. What kinds of things do we get estimates on? The weather, but I would say too, let's say for example you need to fix your car or your motorcycle, and you go to the mechanic and they look at it and they're like, oh, this is broken or that needs to be replaced, and then often we say, can you give me an estimate as to how much it will cost? Yeah, it's like, tell me about how much it will cost. Give me a cost, yeah, so we could say a price estimate or price quote or quotation. It means an estimate. It means how much is this going to cost me? Okay. Okay. So let's say it together. Estimate. Estimate. Now this is another word where we pronounce it differently because estimate is a 名词, right? But if this becomes a 动词, then we pronounce this a with a long a. So then you say estimate. Okay, so why don't we say it as a 动词? To estimate. One more time. To estimate. Okay, that's a 动词, but here it's a 名词, so we say estimate. Okay, so we don't pronounce that long A. Okay, so yeah. So the government released a new estimate in March saying that such a megaquake and subsequent tsunami. What's a tsunami? Okay, yeah. You know, a long time ago we used to say tidal wave, but I've heard that word is not very accurate. So, but yeah, the old word for tsunami is people would say tidal wave. Okay. Now, you know, does everybody know what a tide is? Yeah. So, you know, we have high tide and we have low tide, right? But, you know, a tsunami is not caused by the tide, right? So some people say, oh, tidal wave is not a very good name for this. So actually, in the West, in Mexico and everywhere else, now we use the Japanese word a lot. So why don't we say together, tsunami? Tsunami. Okay, so it says megaquake and subsequent tsunami. What does the word subsequent mean? Yes, it means following, resulting from. Okay, so sometimes we say subsequent. Of course, this is a 形容词, but we could also say as a 副词, we could say subsequently, right? You did this happened, and then he subsequently did that, right? It means he did this afterwards. So it means following or coming after. Okay, it's a good word. So why don't we say it together? Subsequent. 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 And then there's a 副词, subsequently. Subsequently. Okay, you remember in, what was it, 2011, there was a big tsunami, no, there was a big earthquake in Japan and a subsequent tsunami, right? You remember that? Okay, so this is something that, you know, Japan has to live with, right? It's quite normal for Japan. Yeah. Okay, so let's read this. The government released a new estimate in March saying that such a megaquake and subsequent tsunami. One more time. Subsequent tsunami could cause as many as 298,000 deaths and damages of up to $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Okay, so I just want a small note here. It says that such a megaquake. When we say that such a megaquake, what does this mean?
Like this.
Right, it means like this, okay? That such a megaquake means a megaquake like this. Okay, so we could say a megaquake like this, or we could say that such a megaquake, right? Let me use this in a different way. You could say that such a problem would cause us many difficulties. Or you could say a problem like this would cause us many difficulties. So when we say such something, like such a megaquake, it means like this, 像这样子, right? Like the same thing. Okay, does everybody understand that? Okay, so just want to make that clear. Okay, so that's a photo caption. So let's go on here. It says, in 2014, the Japanese Central Disaster Management Council issued a preparedness plan recommending a series of measures that it hoped would reduce deaths by 80%. Okay, that's a lot to reduce it, to take it down by 80%. Okay, so this is some sort of a group, a council, an organization. The Central Disaster Management Council issued a preparedness. Now, issue means to 发行, to put out a preparedness plan. Okay, so here they're recommending a series of measures, a series of, we could say, actions. Measures, actions that it hopes would reduce deaths. Okay? So let's read this. In 2014, the Japanese Central Disaster Management Council let's say that last part. Disaster Management Council issued a preparedness plan. Again, preparedness plan. Recommending a series of measures. Series of measures that it hoped would reduce deaths by 80%. Right. When we say a series of measures, right, you know what series is, right? Like a series means a string, a line of something. Like, for example, on Sunday I went to watch a baseball game. I went to see the 兄弟队, right? Unfortunately, they lost. But there was a series. It was a series. I think it was a 3-game series, maybe a 2-game. Well, at least 2 games, 3 games against Kaohsiung. You know, what is that? TSG Hawks. Not Lao Ying, but hawk is a certain kind of bird. Yeah, maybe it's some sort of ying. Yeah. Anyhow, there was when we say a game, a series, it means a series of games, not just one game, but several games. Okay. Or you watch on TV. Sometimes we like to watch soap opera, 连续剧, right? We have a TV series, right? You know what a soap opera is, right? Does everybody know that? Does everybody know this term? It's kind of funny, right? Yeah, you know what soap is, right? Soap is what fades out, right? And opera, you know what opera is, right? Yeah. So it's a funny word for 连续剧 because I think, I'm not sure, but I think long time ago, like maybe in 50年代 or 60年代, when they would show these TV shows, they were always sponsored by 肥皂公司. They would 买广告. And so we call them soap operas. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, why don't we say together, soap opera. Soap opera. And it's funny, we still use this term today. Like many people told me that they started to love Korean culture because they like to watch Korean soap operas, right? Okay. I guess they're still quite popular. Okay. So anyhow, so that would be a TV series because it's not just one 节目, it's a whole series of TV shows or programs. Okay? So let's read this together. Did we read? No, we didn't read this. Did we? Yeah, we did read this. Yeah, we did. So let's go to the next paragraph. Okay, I'm getting confused. Okay, it says, however, the government has said that so far the steps taken would only cut the death toll by 20%. So instead of 80%, 20%. Kyoto News Agency reported, and an updated preparedness plan was issued on Tuesday. Okay, I don't think we need to read that. Let's just keep going here. It says here, the recommended accelerated efforts, including constructing embankments and evacuation buildings, as well as holding more regular drills to improve public readiness. Okay, so recommended, right? Recommend, you know what recommend means, right? So here recommend becomes a 形容词, right? Often, like when you want to go to a restaurant, right? You want to go out for dinner, you look online and you say, which restaurants are recommended? It means which ones are they get the best choice, recommended. Or you can say, this restaurant is recommended by,康百视杂志, yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So COMPASS magazine. Okay. So why don't we say together, recommended. Recommended. Okay, so it says here the recommended accelerated efforts. Okay, you know what effort is like like an action, like a 动作, right? But what does accelerated mean? It means to go faster, right? So I know we've learned this word before, but to accelerate means to speed up. Okay, so like if you're in your car, if you want to go faster, you push on the accelerator. It's the pedal that makes the car go faster. So when we use this as a 形容词, it means these actions are going faster, to be sped up, to make to do something more quickly, okay? Because they want to get ready, right? So they're accelerating their efforts, okay? So why don't we say it together? Accelerated. Accelerated. Remember that the C here is a K sound, K, and the second C is a S. So as a 动词, we say to accelerate. Okay, so let's say it again. To accelerate. One more time. To accelerate. Okay, so the recommended accelerated efforts, including constructing embankments. Now, does everybody know what an embankment is? Yeah, so in Taiwan, also, if you have water, like you have a river, and then the government will build a wall, that protects the land from the water. We call that an embankment. It's not a 水坝, it's not a dam. A dam is, yeah. Like if you go along the Taichung, the rivers, right, there's many embankments, right? And it keeps the river inside. It doesn't allow the water to go outside. So why don't we say together, embankment? Embankment. There's a word that we use a lot in America for that. We call it a levee. Yeah. But we don't use that word much outside of America. But levee is a kind of an embankment. Okay. So constructing embankments and evacuation buildings. Okay. Now, this is interesting. You know what an evacuation is, right? Like if there was a fire in this building, then we need to evacuate the building. We need to leave the building. But here they're building a special building for evacuations. Like I guess you go to these buildings. These are special buildings that people go to, probably during a tsunami, right? Maybe they're higher or they're protected. Yeah. Okay. So why don't we say together, evacuation. Evacuation. As the 动词 would be te, right? So why don't we say together, to evacuate. To evacuate. Okay, so evacuation buildings, as well as holding more regular, regular means routine, yeah. What is a drill? Exercise. Yeah, exercise, like, what is it, 演习, right? Yeah, but a drill doesn't have to be military drill. It could be a fire drill, right? You know what a fire drill is, right? I think in Taiwan, do the schools have earthquake drills, right? What do you do in an earthquake? Okay. Every year in Taiwan, I know they have an air raid drill. Yeah. It's very funny. Let me just write that down. We say air raid drill. Okay. It's very funny when I'm doing my 跨文化训练, I always mention air raid drill, and many 外国人 are very alarmed by this. They're like, "What? Air raid drill? What's going on?" And I'm like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's 30 minutes, 30分钟, it's over." Yeah. You're probably at work anyhow. You're outside. You're at your office. But I'm like, don't be outside. I think I've only been outside one time during air raid drill. But fortunately, there was a 7-Eleven right there, so I just went to the 7-Eleven. But, yeah. So why don't we say together, air raid drill. Air raid drill. Okay. So let's read this together. The recommended accelerated efforts. Again, accelerated efforts. Including constructing embankments and evacuation buildings, as well as holding more regular drills, to improve public readiness. Readiness. So again, this word readiness is similar to the other word preparedness, right? Readiness, preparedness, to be ready, to be prepared. We turn that into this word, readiness, okay? Okay, so it says, it is necessary for the nation, municipalities, companies, and nonprofits. So here this is great, because remember here they turn it into a 名词, right? Remember what I told you earlier? So here he's not saying nonprofit organizations or institutions. He just says nonprofits, okay? To come together and take measures in order to save as many lives as possible, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba told a government meeting, local media reported. Okay, so it's necessary for the nation. This is another word for what? Cities. Right, when we say municipalities, it's another word for cities. Okay, so we could, as a 形容词, we could say municipal, right? Sometimes we have a municipal library, right? Or municipal museum, or yeah, there's many different things. So why don't we say together, let's say the first word, municipal. Municipal. Municipalities. Municipalities. Okay, so they should come together, they should unite, okay, and take measures, to take action to save as many lives as possible. Okay, so let's read this. It is necessary for the nation, municipalities, companies and nonprofits to come together and take measures in order to save as many lives as possible. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba told a government meeting. Local media reported. Okay, let's read one more paragraph here. I know we're running out of time, but well, let's read these two together, because there's some words here. It says, the Nankai Trough is an 800-kilometer undersea gully running parallel to Japan's Pacific coast, where one tectonic plate is subducting or slowly slipping underneath another. Over the past 1,400 years, megaquakes in the Nankai Trough have occurred every 100 to 200 years. The last one was in 1946. So we're not quite there at 100 years yet, but here there's some interesting words here. Undersea, of course, means under the sea, underwater. Gully, what is a gully? Does anyone know? Yeah, it's like a gully is another word for ditch, but usually a gully is a natural ditch. It's not, we don't build a gully, well, not usually, but a gully would be like kind of like but it's usually like a big, wide, like it's not like a narrow, like for example, if you're walking down the road and you see a ditch, we call that a ditch. But if you go out to the mountains and there's like a wide, a broad that you can, like something you can stand in, you know, it's big, we might call that a gully. It's a natural feature. It's not something that you build. It's naturally there. So it's just another word for that kind of shape, that form, okay? So why don't we say together, gully. 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 Okay, so it runs parallel to Japan's Pacific coast. What does the word parallel mean? Yeah. So this is a good word. We talk about, you know, these are parallel lines, right? They run next to each other. So we say parallel to Japan's Pacific coast. Okay, where one tectonic plate. Now, tectonic plate is, you know, I'm sure you know this. In the world, they have these big plates, right? And when they hit each other, that's when we have an earthquake, right? Maybe one goes. So here is subducting. It's slipping underneath another plate. So one plate is slipping under the other plate. So we say, this is a very, very technical word. I'm sure most Americans don't know what this means. So that's why they define it. It means, subducting means slowly slipping, okay, underneath another plate. Okay. So why don't we say these words together? Undersea gully. Gully. Okay, and then this word. Parallel to. Parallel to. And we always say that. This is parallel to something else. Okay. And then this word, tectonic. Tectonic. Yeah, this is a word that we only use for talking about earthquakes. We say tectonic, okay? And then, I know we'll probably never use this word again, but let's say it's subducting. Subducting. Yeah, it's not a word we normally use. Okay, so let's read this then. The Nankai Trowel is an 800-kilometer undersea gully running parallel to Japan's Pacific coast, where one tectonic plate is subducting, slowly slipping underneath another. Over the past 1,400 years, okay, 1,400 years, megaquakes in the Nankai Trowel have occurred every 100 to 200 years. The last one was in 1946. Right, okay. So we'll see. I'm guessing, I'm predicting that there's no megaquake on Saturday. But if there is a megaquake on Saturday in Japan, wow, well then that woman or whoever she really is a prophet, right? You know what a prophet is, right? Yeah, a prophet is someone who makes a prophecy. So, yeah, like Nostradamus. The person, we say, is a prophet. Okay? Why don't we say together, prophet? Prophet. Prophet. Yeah. So, anyhow, I think earthquakes are hard to predict and, we just have to be ready, right? Prepared, right? That's the most important thing. Yeah. Okay, so anyhow, I won't see you until next month, but I hope you stay cool this July. Don't get too hot outside, and we'll see you in August. Thank you.